What is going on, Pooj crew? Thank you for being here for episode 129 of the Poojie Podcast. Loaded episode for you today. Everything from Jacksonville Jaguar talk, what is going on in this front office. They might not even know what their game plan is at this point, what happened during conference championship weekend, and what we can expect from Super Bowl Sunday in 2 short weeks. Actually, it'll feel 2 long weeks from now because there's no football this coming weekend. However, thank you for being here. Subscribe on YouTube. Go find us on your preferred podcast streaming platform, as well as find us on Instagram. We'll be doing Super Bowl squares again this year, $5 a square. You can submit your squares through Instagram, Facebook, texting, whatever's easiest for you. But Super Bowl squares is back, so go check that out on our Instagram and Facebook page as well. Definitely jump in on the fun. Maximum of 5 squares per fan that joins in. But let's jump into this. I have Jacob here joining me on this episode of the podcast. Jacob, thank you for being here, man. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. I got you. I just unmuted you.
I was just saying you're welcome because it was very difficult knowing the topic that we're talking about.
Oh yeah, it's awful. Like could you imagine like if we covered a good team, how much more fun these could be, just being able to talk about, Joe Burrow in his second year taking the Bengals to the playoffs or whatever the case is. Like
Well,
it just
even with the team being bad, like this hypothetically should be something very exciting to talk about. The opportunity, like even last year, we know that Urban Meyer didn't pan out now, but even last year at the time, like it was exciting to discuss. Number one pick, all this cap space. The potential of most coaches or players potentially being excited to come here because we were going to have a great situation, a great foundation, and a great setup to build something that was, so poor. And you would think that we would have had the greatest opportunity to actually get a good start with such a beautiful slate. But instead, we're back at the same slate that should be attractive, but for some reason, they're just not getting people to either want to interview, or the ones that do interview, they're not pulling the trigger on the guys we want. It's very
yeah.
awkward. It's very weird, and I just can't believe we're in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I as well as every other Jaguar fan knows how big of a dumpster fire this franchise has been for a decade plus since Shad Khan got the team from Wayne Weaver back in 2010, 2011, I think it was. This is his 10th year. And to say that this has been the worst tenure of an owner in NFL history is an understatement, in my opinion, simply from what he's put on the field, what he's done for the city. Yay, clap, your hands, whatever, high fives, cookies for you. But as far as what the fans genuinely care about on the field, it's just simply not been there. And then to go from back-to-back off seasons of needing to hire a new coach, and you're not in a situation where you have coaches jumping at this opportunity, says so much to me about this organization. I mean, Trevor Lawrence didn't have the best rookie year. He did go through, 2 offensive coordinators, went through a coaching change. It was a very treacherous rookie season, to say the least, for him. Probably the most ambiguity or what adversity any quarterback faced last year as far as rookies go. You should have coaches wanting this job with the cap space, with the draft capital, with Trevor Lawrence. But Shad Khan simply seems to be like the kind of guy that doesn't want to let the leash go and give it to someone else. And sometimes if you're not a capable dog walker, maybe you're too old, maybe you're not strong enough, you got to give the leash to someone that's more suitable for the job. And he's not there.
Yeah, the way that I see it is, one, like I said, this should be an exciting process, but this is also one of the most important processes we will go through for Trevor's sake, because when you talk about different players that we've had and different coordinators, that's only going to hinder anybody at any level, whether they're a great quarterback, a good quarterback, a bad quarterback, doesn't matter. Going through coordinators so many times is never going to help a team and a quarterback. So this is a very important hire because we don't want to have to be in the same position again in a year or 2 years or 3 years. Hopefully, whoever we hire is someone that's going to be around for a decade or something to actually add consistency to a player that has so much potential and a team that could have potential with that player. As long as you are growing within something rather than constantly like having to break it down or restart. And I feel like most of the time, like an owner that doesn't maybe know too much about football isn't bad. as long as they're staying out of the way. But he's not staying out of the way is the problem, and he's actually more involved than we now would like because we understand how completely disastrous this has become.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is if you know a team's owner's name, that probably means they're in the way a little bit too much. And you think about Jerry Jones with the Dallas Cowboys and how much criticism he's faced of trying to have his hands on the team roster too long over the last 5-10 years. A lot of criticism towards the owner. I mean, listen, the owner is there obviously to fund the team and make decisions from a business standpoint. But at the end of the day, I always go back to the restaurant analogy. The owner of a restaurant isn't always typically the manager. There's always a manager. There's someone that maybe has more experience, and the owner is someone that just has the seed money to get it off the ground and running. And the fact that the whole NFL now knows Shad Khan's name simply from clown emojis on Twitter and from news reports from around the city is embarrassing to us because from off the top of my head, I could maybe name 5 to 6 NFL owners, maybe 10 if I really thought about it. But for the most part, when you look at good teams, you mentioned it just now. They have good structure. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have a good structure. They're a good organization. They're highly regarded in the NFL world as one of the best run organizations. They're a pretty good team, and I have no doubt they'll rebound from losing Big Ben. You look at other organizations that have solid structures like the Kansas City Chiefs. Look what they've been able to do. And now you have the Cincinnati Bengals who are moving into the playoffs with Joe Burrow as a second-year head coach. Yeah, they might not be the best team as far as the last decade or two, but when they had Marvin Lewis, they were a respected franchise. I think a lot of franchises that have that consistency, I think the success builds off of the consistency that you have in the front office. And unfortunately for the Jaguars, they haven't hit the nail on the head. And I think it starts with the fact that they don't have a football operations president or vice president. They don't have someone that can step in and that knows exactly what they're looking for with players or hires. They just kind of run like the Wild West, and Shad Khan doesn't seem to want to give those reins over to someone that's definitely more suitable.
And that's the thing, as an owner, like you said, your job isn't to run the football operations and put everything in place, but your job is to hire someone that you really trust to do so. And I think that the whole Tom Coughlin being an EVP type deal, it didn't work out at the time, but we definitely need somebody in that role. So when we get in situations or off seasons like this, which hopefully it's not much more often, there's somebody in charge that this is what they do. They know how to look for a GM, they know how to look for a coach and all these things. But even us as fans, we've heard so much about people not wanting to work with Trent Baalke, and you can't tell me that Shad Khan doesn't have his own circles or his own TV to even hear these things. Like, he has to know that there's all this, not even smoke, there's just burning fire everywhere, that nobody wants to work with this man. And there's nothing wrong with the man as a person as far as I'm concerned. I just know that he doesn't succeed at his job, so he shouldn't be in it. And the consistency is so important, because if you're a team that goes from this big, we were so bad, like 2 wins, to like playoffs and almost Super Bowl, just like with us, that wasn't consistent. If we do it like so fast, that's not going to be sustainable. We need to have someone come in, and we, like, hopefully not too slowly, but slowly build up to a level that now we're there every year, that any year could be the year, but our bad years aren't 2 wins. Our bad years are hopefully 7 wins or 6 or 8 wins. And, we're always on the cusp given any year. And I don't know. It's just so hard. I can't rack my brain around how hard this has been, because from a fan perspective, it seems like it's so easy. It seems like Byron wants to do this, and they're just being difficult.
Well, as a fan, for me, it's gone from, all right, I don't really care because we've seen so many bad hires that, back 3-4 weeks ago, I don't really care. Just bring someone in that, maybe has some experience, maybe has a good pedigree, a good coaching tree, to, okay, now I care. And now I'm back to, okay, I don't care. Like, it's been a roller coaster of, I don't care, I do care. And now I don't care, because it seems like waking up every morning hoping to see the news drop is just false hope, which is classic Jaguars move for all of its fans, just false hope. But the fact that the Jaguars in 2017, which is now 5 years ago, let's not forget, it's almost like that success from that year, Shad Khan's holding on to as like, oh, that's why I can do this because I had
Yeah.
one good year, without taking into account the fact that he's had 9 terrible years and he's letting that one good year just kind of overshadow everything. And to make matters worse, he goes out and hires Tom Coughlin, which the fans at the time kind of wanted. And then, he hires Urban Meyer, which was a big splash hire. And at that point, I looked at myself in the mirror and said, we have an owner that's not afraid to make moves to do what's necessary. And now here we sit today at the beginning of February, that now I feel like we have an owner that is scared to make big moves to do what's necessary. And it's annoying. And for those out there, obviously, what's happening. And we would just, sound like idiots trying to explain it even further. But Byron Leftwich coming in, there were reports that he was pretty much guaranteed the job and he was going to bring Adrian Wilson along, former all-pro safety from the Cardinals, come in as a GM EVP type role, but there still wasn't certainty that Baalke was going to be gone. And then that all kind of went away. And now the Jaguars, 30 days after their first interview with Doug Peterson, are now interviewing him a second time, which has to be a record for most days between first and second interview, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I really get the feel that the team is running out of plans, like plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. And now they're just going back to whatever maybe didn't simmer out yet.
And not even like the fact that it's been such a long time between a first and second interview for him, but he's not working. He's not at a job with the team. We didn't have to wait for any playoff games to finish. So that makes it a lot worse just because you're like, you could have interviewed him a second time at any given point, but you didn't. But now that we're having these like, reports of, okay, Byron's being contacted by the New Orleans Saints. Like, we would like to interview you. What's a little interesting is we haven't actually heard of a scheduled interview yet. So, I mean, that kind of makes me hopeful. But it also it adds like, there's no transparency with the Jags search. So it just puts us in limbo. And I've literally like tweeted out, like, I might just delete my Twitter app because it's almost more emotional to sit and look at it every day and up and down rather than like get rid of it and just find out when it happens, if it happens. I don't know.
And now, honestly, the way I feel about it, kind of to that point is now there's reports that they're interviewing Rick Spielman, former GM of the Vikings, but then it's like, I don't even trust. Okay, him getting hired means Trent Baalke's gone. Like, I won't believe Trent Baalke is not in the plans until he is officially no longer a part of this team, and unless all of us fans are overreacting, which I do not think is the case. What I think could be happening is maybe the Jaguars are trying to get all their ducks in a row for, head coach, GM, executive vice president, all three things. That way, when the hires happen, they happen sequentially. They happen back to back to back. And then that way they don't need to worry about hiring one person and then 3 weeks later hiring another person. Maybe that's the case. Maybe because what I did hear is Shad Khan and Tony Khan went down to Southwest Florida to interview with Doug Peterson, and Trent Baalke was not in the conversation. Trent Baalke was not with them on that trip. And you would expect Trent Baalke to maybe be involved with those conversations. So that maybe could be leaning as a sign towards him not being involved anymore. But really, it is just a crazy situation. Now, Jacob, I do want to ask you this, and maybe I'll have my opinion as well after you respond, is if we were to wake up tomorrow morning and you saw a notification that says Jaguars make front office changes, in your ideal world, what are those ideal changes, or what are those hires that you want to see at this point in the process?
Well, first off, what I was going to say is that even when this happens, even if it's what I wanted all along, this has already left such a bad taste in my mouth that I don't know. I'd have to have a pretty good story as to what has gone on to like trust Shad Khan again, football wise. But yes, if it happened tomorrow, first words I should see is Trent Baalke, let go, fired, whatever. I don't care what you say. If you say it nice, if you say it mean, that needs to be gone, because to move on from what we were, you got to clean house to become what we want to be. And then I don't know how fast dominoes would roll. I don't think it would happen like immediately. But yes, Trent Baalke's got to be first. And then hopefully I'm hearing, I guess like maybe an Adrian Wilson, if that's who Byron wants to work with, because I think you normally hire a GM first. But I think a combination of Adrian Wilson and Byron Leftwich are currently the dream scenario that we've already been fed, we've hoped for, and we've been told to be true. Um, if it was Doug Peterson, Jim Caldwell, I think it's interesting because originally I would have been in love with either of those hires at a long time ago. Now I'm almost like I don't want to say it would be bad, but I would be a little underwhelmed because I've already got excited for the idea of a combo like Adrian Wilson and Byron Leftwich, two young, up and coming, smart individuals to really change the team around. But yes, nonetheless, first thing I would want to see tomorrow morning, if it happened, was fire Trent Baalke.
And I think 99 out of 100 Jaguar fans say the same thing as far as what they would want to see first. For me personally, I think the Leftwich Adrian Wilson hire is the more electric, more exciting hire, kind of some uncertainty as far as what they could do together as a duo. And obviously they know each other from their time together in Arizona. I think for me, the safer route would be Jim Caldwell, Doug Peterson, just because they have more of a track record. We would know what we're getting into. And me personally, from the very beginning of this, I said that I wanted I wanted to go the more experienced route because
Yeah.
I feel like in the current state of this organization, we need someone that's going to come in and not only demand respect from the team, but demand respect from the league. And sometimes as an offensive coordinator turned head coach, there might be this view of, okay, he's a rookie, he's a young guy, whatever the case is. That being said, we've seen both these things work. We've seen Andy Reid get hired by the Chiefs after his tenure with the Eagles and him have success. We've seen Bruce Arians get fired or leave the Cardinals, come to Tampa, and he's had success. On that same note, we've seen Sean McVay leave Washington as a quarterback's coach and have success. Hell, he's in the Super Bowl. And across the sideline from him, Zach Taylor, another quarterback coach turned head coach in the NFL, that's had success.
Yeah.
Matt LaFleur. So I think on both ends, there have been successes, and obviously there have been failures on both ends as well, no matter what route you go. I personally would take the more experienced route, the more structured route, just for Trevor Lawrence's sake. I think it would be good to kind of have maybe a more structured situation in the front office. And a guy like Jim Caldwell, who's been around for a while in the NFL circles, probably knows one or two guys that could help out in the front office as well. And honestly, what's weird to me is if I'm Shad Khan and this situation's happening, why would you not want to go out and hire someone to kind of take some of the heat off of you? Because right now, all the fingers are pointing at you. And if you go out and hire someone, now the stuff that happens on the field, you now kind of have set yourself up with a scapegoat, as bad as that sounds. He's taking all the blame right now. If he can go out and find someone to take that EVP role, football operations role, I think that almost would be more relaxing for him.
And I just want to jump back what you're saying with Byron and wanting like a Peterson or Caldwell with experience. The interesting thing is, and maybe it's like it just grew on me, and this is a confirmation bias at this point. But with a young first time head coach, for some reason I do see Byron as someone being able to come in and demand respect. Maybe not demand it, but earn it in a way, because it seems like from different things I've seen. I mean, everyone's seen the Marshall video of him getting carried by his offensive line. I mean, that's obvious, but different ways, um, different videos you've seen of him speaking and just the way he talks, I think people would buy into that. But one of the interesting things I saw on, I think it was like I Am Athlete on that podcast, LaShawn McCoy was saying that when he was playing under Byron, I think I'm guessing he was with him in the Bucks, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
he said it was the first time in his career, and we know that was at the end of his career, uh, that it was the first time a coach ever mentioned about like midway through the season or so, like, hey, if you have any incentives, let me know and I'll help you, get those. And he was like in shock because normally people don't discuss that. But Byron was like a man for the players. He was like, if you have this money bonus, he's like, I know everyone's trying to get their money. I'm trying to help you get your money. So if you need extra this, extra that, let me know. We can work on helping you get that. And that is something I never really thought of as going on or not going on in like a coaching room. But that affected LaShawn McCoy enough to speak on it later. So I feel like that's in Byron to have that leadership and have that respect earned like pretty quickly. I almost said easily, but I want to say easily. But if there's any first time head coach, I would be at this point pretty comfortable with him. But I was like you, where I'm like, I want a Caldwell or Peterson who's done it and who can handle all this. But at this point, the fans have just been teased too much for it to not happen, I feel.
Yeah, no, and the tease has obviously been going on now for over a week because those reports came out about a week ago. I think it was Thursday last week, and I remember Thursday we were waiting for the announcement, and then Friday came around. I remember seeing tweets of, "Hey, can you make this happen so I can get back to work?" and that kind of stuff. So this has been happening for quite some time here in Jacksonville. I know us fans are kind of fed up with it. Not only are we fed up with the poor product, but we're fed up with this situation because how can you be the spotlight of the NFL offseason as a coaching search when you had 4 weeks head start on everyone else and you're like what's being talked about on the NFL network, on ESPN, just because of how dysfunctional you are. I mean, Tom Brady retires, the Brian Flores reports come out, and here we are still occupied with what Jacksonville's doing with their head coaching search. And not to mention, I will say this, my final point on it is I think it is kind of embarrassing seeing reports come out at this time where the Jaguars say, oh, Kevin O'Connell, Rams offensive coordinator, is now a candidate. Rich Bisaccia is now a candidate. Rick Spielman is now a candidate. It's kind of embarrassing to see those types of reports because you had a 4-week head start on the whole process. So why in the world were these guys not candidates in the 16-17 week 16-17 when you had a head start on every other team? Meanwhile, the Broncos go out and hire their guy. The Bears go out and hire their guy. The Dolphins go out and they haven't hired their guy yet, but the Giants go out and hire their guy. I mean, so many teams hired their guy within a week, and it is what it is. But I think it's just embarrassing to the Jaguars to have these new candidates arising at this point when you should already be narrowed down to 2 or 3 people. That just tells me that what the Jaguars are putting out there, these candidates are not receiving well. Not to mention Kevin O'Connell now. I think that's his name. Kevin
Mm-hmm.
O'Connell.
Yeah.
He now is in the Super Bowl. So the Jaguars, if that is the route they go, would have to wait even longer for him. So now it's like, what are the prop bets? What's going to happen first? A Super Bowl champion or the Jaguars hire a head coach? I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, and the thing is I really don't know. I feel like I really just don't know anything. Like, I don't know what the Jags want. I don't know what these candidates think of the Jags. I don't know what we're really doing. Like, for Kevin O'Connell to come out of left field once it seems like Byron is falling through the cracks, and then, oh, well, guess what? Well, you can't do the interview now because their team won. So it was almost like, oh shoot, like what are we gonna do? Let's go after this guy who I heard, had a decent resume. Unfortunately, it's just with everything that's already happened, it just doesn't hit. Um, but it's almost like, oh, let's do this because maybe we might lose out on Byron over here and our first options. Well, guess what? Now you can't interview because they're going to the next round, and it's just a mess. Like, it seems like there was no structure in the search. There was no obvious intent. I thought there was obvious intent until it just didn't happen straight up. I thought the intent was, if Byron's good to go, he's good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
but
it's funny you say that. No structure in the search kind of marries well with no structure in the organization. So that kind of makes sense. Funny enough, the Jaguars haven't really lost out on any candidates because a lot of the candidates that they identified early on didn't even end up getting hired elsewhere, which is kind of interesting, I guess, except Nathaniel Hackett, which I don't know how much of a realistic possibility that was here in Jacksonville for him to come here. What I do like about a young head coach is I do think they bring a fresh mindset to the game. So what I like about Peterson and Caldwell, the exact opposite goes for Leftwich or like a LaFleur or McVay, excuse me, Zach Taylor. They kind of bring that new style NFL offense because they've been so recent to the game. They kind of know how the game works, and they're good player coaches as well. I mean, hell, McVay's out there coaching Andrew Whitworth, who is 7 years older than him. And it's just like, McVay was able to get the respect of his team. I'm sure Byron would be able to do that here. We'll see what happens. Those out there listening, thank you for being here. Episode 129 on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, go find part 2 of this episode. We will discuss the conference championship games that were the Super Bowl matchup coming up between the Rams and the Bengals. If you're listening on Spotify, stick right here. We have that coming up for you. But real quick, again, go check us out on Instagram. We are doing Super Bowl squares this year. Find us on Instagram at the Poojie Podcast. $5 a square, maximum 5 squares per guest that joins in per entry, I guess, 5 squares per entry, to do that for the big game coming up in 2 weeks. So we still got time, but don't be late because we do only have 100 squares. So go check out the Instagram right now. It should be up there by the time you're listening to this episode.